Pennsylvania, Florida, California, USBC. This panel is moderated by Rachel Wolfson, States Leading the Way. Let's give him a welcome.
Test. Okay, it's on. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Wolfson. I'll be moderating this panel entitled States Leading the Way. I'm the host and founder of Web3 Deep Dive Podcast, and I'm also a longtime reporter with Cointelegraph. And I'm going to sit down and let the panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Ari Yu. I am the Executive Director of the U.S. Blockchain Coalition and also the Head of Strategy U.S. for the GBBC.
Good morning, everybody. Dominic Foligno, founder of the Pennsylvania Blockchain Coalition.
Good morning. Jamie Miner, coming from California, the president of the California Blockchain Advocacy Coalition, founded in 2018.
My name is Samuel Arms. I'm founder of the Florida Blockchain Business Association, founded in 2017.
Okay, great. So the name of the panel is States Leading the Way. So I think the first question should be, why is it important for states to be innovative in terms of blockchain and Web3 and crypto adoption? So whoever wants to start, feel free.
Yeah, I'll start with the head of the USBC. So really, at the end of the day, this is all about innovation at the grassroots level. Like, that's where the people are investing, that's where the people are building, that's where the hyper-local communities are. And so that's why it matters. I mean, states matter because that's where the people are.
Yes, the people are in the states. But no, I absolutely agree. And with all due respect to many of our federal colleagues, I think that it's easier to move through the states quickly. And, you know, you can actually innovate at the state level and work through your legislatures there.
Is my mic? Oh, it is working now. So I think the reason states are important is because states can really push the bounds on what we see on a policy level. Congress obviously hasn't moved at all. And that's not to say anything negative about the people who are working in D.C., but when you have Democrats and Republicans controlling different chambers, obviously that's a big issue if they simply tit for tat don't want to work with each other. States in the current era that we're in, I think, can really push the boundaries, whether it's constitutional or not, to essentially push things forward to make Congress react. And so I think that's why what we're doing on a state level is going to be incredibly important, because as long as Congress is not going to act, we can literally set the standard.
Yeah, and, states, they're really building that bench, that pipeline for folks that end up in Congress. So one of our champions over the past few years, she authored legislation that would have allowed states to accept crypto as a form of payment for tax revenue. She's now in Congress. People remember when you come to them early, when you believe in them and say, hey, I want to make you a champion in this space. I know you've never heard of it. Let me educate you on it. And then 10 years later, when they're in Congress or chairing a committee, they think back to their roots and who those early supporters were. So we're trying to cultivate those early supporters now to make everybody's job easier down the road in Congress as well.
And there's this famous quote by Justice Brandeis: states are the best laboratories for democracy, right? I mentioned this yesterday when we were doing our announcement. Instead of fighting the fight only in D.C., which has a ton of friction, as we've seen and will continue to see as we head into 2024, go to the states. I mean, we are nimble, we can move quickly, we care, we have feet on the ground, we have the relationships with the hyper-local communities. You have an innovative policy idea, let's pass it in 4 or 5 or 6 states, get the best practices, and then go to DC if we need to.
Yeah, and so just following up on that, can we talk a little bit about what you guys have passed in your state specifically that has helped in terms of innovation in the space?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that we've done in my state in Florida is we passed the first anti-central bank digital currency bill, the anti-CBDC bill, which, because my governor is running for president, then became a national issue, which is a big deal. And so you see in that bill passage how states can literally affect policy on not only a national scale, but also a global scale. And it's also strategic because one of the biggest debates is, well, do we have the authority to do that? One, I think we do, but two, if we don't care, right? Much like in California, where now we have legalization of marijuana everywhere. When you're thinking of policy and strategy, you have to think politically. What's politically advantageous? And that's why, once again, the states are so efficient and effective at what they do, because whether I have the authority to do so or not, you'll notice positions in D.C. don't necessarily go by the authority that they have vested in them in the Constitution either, right? So if you actually want to be productive and fight back in any way, shape, or form, you also have to push the boundaries on the state level. And so I think our anti-CBDC bill was just a landmark in that field.
Yeah, when we first started, it really was educate, educate. Let's just bring this issue to government so they know what they need to be thinking about, what these technologies could be utilized for to help, better the lives of their constituents. So we started with use cases and just, government is a perfect use case, or they have the capability to use these technologies to make government more efficient. So we worked on legislation that allows the use of verifiable credentials via the blockchain for storing data, vital records data. So your marriage licenses, your death certificates, they're right now stored in paper in dark, dirty basements and, different local government houses all across the state. That's not efficient. When somebody needs access to those records, that's not efficient. So we put forward a measure that, it just enables local governments to start thinking about the use of those technologies. Then Terra Luna happened. We are a very unique state out in California. Consumer protection is key. So we had legislation. We had to be turned on the defense. And there was a bill very similar to the New York bit license, which, as many of you recall, drove the entire industry out of the state, many years ago. And so we learned from what happened there. We had to step in, say that, no, this could happen here in California. We can't let that happen. California is, we say it's the truth. The number one innovator when it comes to these companies and where they are headquartered. Will it always be? We don't know. That's a risk. And so that's why we have to do the work that we're doing. But we engaged in that legislation that, could have been very punitive to these companies that are just looking for regulatory clarity. We were able to get it vetoed initially and then came back. There was another bill introduced last year to set up a licensing scheme for crypto, and we worked alongside regulators to make it much more feasible and able to implement. So, we turned from being on the offense to the defense rather quickly, but you just kind of have to be nimble to the landscape that, surrounds you.
I couldn't agree more. When we started the Blockchain Coalition in PA, it was about educate, educate, educate. 3 years ago, actually, we're a full-time legislature in PA, so 3 sessions ago, we had no bills relating to blockchain or crypto, and now we have 12. We're fortunate enough, we even have one of our PA state reps came to Texas for this, which was amazing. We had a similar instance where we have like a New York bit license bill. We were able to speak with the sponsor, and he was reasonable enough to understand that what he was doing maybe needed a little bit more, need to be fleshed out more, some policy committees. So we were able to pull that back a little bit. Similarly, we had a mining moratorium bill that was exactly like New York's. The Pennsylvania Blockchain Coalition and our partners worked to strip out the mining language in that. So now it's just simply a disclosure bill. But I think to Jamie's point, it's educate, educate, educate. And now that we're, unfortunately, some of our bills, same point, we were on the offense. Now we're definitely on the defense. But the difference is when we're in the Capitol, people know who we are and people are willing to work with us and listen to us because they get that it's moving in that direction. And, I always say that in Pennsylvania, we need to stop. We're amazing at the race to last. And I keep saying to our legislators and our governor and the staff, like, this is an opportunity for us to be a leader with some of our other, brother and sister states. So I think we're getting there, and it is that basis, that foundation of educate, educate, educate.
I want to jump in here also. Sometimes I also wear the hat of the Pacific Northwest. I'm the chair of the Cascadia Blockchain Council, and we typically echo like what California does, just, the tech industry working together. Putting on my USBC hat as the executive director, Just want to make one commentary for people that are interested in states issues and wanting to work with states. For us, we like to call each other as sisters and brothers from another mother. Like, we have a very familial and collegiate sort of like working relationship. We hope you'll do the same with us. Come in with a humble attitude when coming into a state. There are real communities, real people, and the real relationships are held by the people that are working in the ground with the states. So, don't go out and hire your own lobbyists for the state. Like, how do you even know if they're like Web3 native and they understand the space? You don't. You work with the people that are in the ground, in the states, that have the relationships with the policymakers, with the investors, with the entrepreneurs, that know about the communities and the history and what's going on. Work with the states is my big message that I like to make sure I tell you. And if you need to be connected to any state, you want to know who to talk to and you don't know who to talk to, reach out to us. We want to work with you. We want to partner as much as possible. But please, work with the states that we have.
And just to add a quick, Ari's 100% correct, because sometimes when folks can come into states without going through folks, they will do more damage, and that hurts the overall effort. So to Ari's point, I think Sam, you would absolutely agree, Jamie. Come in through us. We know the lay of the land. We know what's been going on, and often we have close relationships with the legislators on the front lines.
Yeah, I actually also have a question based on what you just said, working with the states. Are you guys looking for specific people that can help, give some sort of knowledge in terms of passing legislation? Like, are you guys looking for anyone specific to come in and help?
Well, for lawmakers, it's all about their voters, right? Who do they have to respond to? It's the people that put them in office. What do those people care about on the ground? They care about having jobs, having food on the table, those bread and butter issues. So you have to find ways to resonate with those voters. And one thing that Ari did a really great job with this year with the U.S. Blockchain Coalition is working on an economic impact report for every single state. So all 50 states did a landscape summary of what is the economic impact. So when we go into the legislature, we're armed with facts and saying, hey, this is a $47 billion industry in California. We have 2,000 companies that are just Web3 companies, 147 Fortune 1000 companies that have invested in Web3. These are, statistics that we need. So we're looking for those economists, those folks that are creating the jobs in our states to arm us so we can arm our legislators when they take a tough vote and say, no, I did it because our constituents have jobs because of it, because we are setting the pace and the tone here in our state because of it, that other states and other nations can learn from.
Yeah, and I would follow up with, I definitely think of myself as a political organization, not a policy one, and that's because we're politically active. So what that means is, all across Florida, if you're a business, I connect you with whoever your local legislators are, right? We have a list called Sunshine with a 3. That's who all of our crypto, blockchain-friendly candidates are. We will link you up and say, donate to their campaign, right? Because money talks. Absolutely, it talks. But then that becomes a resource for that legislator on the education front. When we have a bad bill coming down the pipeline, I can immediately get you in touch with a donor and say, here's why it's bad. Currently, this company has 30 jobs in your district. Those 30 people, if they lose their jobs because you support this bill, will not vote for you, right? So that's when you really start to think not just on the policy side, but on the political side as well.
And at the end of the day, we're all people, and people make up communities. So if you're a builder, you're a policymaker, you're whatever it is, show up to community. I mean, we're hosting events, webinars, we're bringing the community together regularly. And so show up to those community events and be known in the community. And then, when we have issues or we need to talk to our policymakers, they love to hear from people that are actually in the trenches building. They don't want to hear yet from another, government manager person. Well, you want to talk to someone that's an actual builder of this technology. And so if you can provide your services to make the 2-3 hour drive, however far along it is, to your state capital and testify and share your stories, show them that we're not black hoodie wearing, super coders, like we're real people. I think that makes a huge difference too.
Yeah, I love that. Are states working together with different states to help pass legislation? Are you guys working together?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Big announcement yesterday with the GBBC and the USBC merging. It's just a matter of, the folks on the stage, obviously Ari and of course our host and all around rock star Lee Bratcher. I mean, we've all worked together to build what we have, and we coordinate on legislation often.
Like one of the big ethos for not just this industry, but for us as the U.S. Blockchain Coalition is we want to break down those silos. I heard a guy, Dale Christie from FedEx, say it once. Like we want to cooperate and competition. Let's cooperate first, and then you can do all your proprietary stuff. But at the end of the day, like fundamentally at the bottom foundational level, we have to be in co-opetition together.
Yeah, I think as much as my Governor Gavin Newsom, and Sam's governor, Ron DeSantis, love to feud publicly. You can catch it November 30th. The two are debating. We don't really know why. We have guesses. But if you're interested, you can tune in. It's a very public, competitive environment that they are clearly creating. That's not how we operate. These issues are complex. The tax structure of DAOs, that's something that we're all kind of, let's find a solution. What's worked in your state? Why didn't that work? What did Democrats say? What did Republicans say? What are some of the pitfalls that we should be aware of? We don't need to reinvent the wheel on some of these really important policy issues if Oregon's done it right, if North Carolina's done it right, if South Carolina's done it right. So we have to learn from each other, trial and error, or else we just won't be effective and we'll waste a heck of a lot of time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, we've taken legislation from other states as our model. Often to Ari's point, legislators view the black hoodie and then the shady character. I once heard this industry, I wish I could remember who said it because I'd give them credit, but it was the idea that you don't know, when you're driving down the highway and you get pulled over, you didn't know the speed limit until you were pulled over. And that's the idea that we need to figure out how to actually regulate it and actually work through it, because we don't want this to move out of our states, obviously, and we definitely don't want it to move out of the country. But I think coordination is key.
When we passed our anti-CBDC bill, I immediately had South Carolina and North Carolina text me and say, hey, can I have the bill? And I was like, yeah, obviously you can have the bill, right? Because then other red states specifically started to say, hey, let me get on board and follow your lead. Even if the bill is different, it doesn't matter, right? Because they have to abide by their own state constitutions, which is exactly what they should do. The goal and the initiative is there. And if a bill is passing in California, which has a completely different makeup and a completely different, possibly, industry, like we don't have oil and gas in Florida. You don't. You have that in Texas. So is mining a priority of ours? No, right? But there are other synergies that when I'm talking to Lee Bratcher, who's doing an amazing job in Texas, I'll look at some of his bills and be like, who fought you on this bill and who pushed you, right? Because if I say that's a great piece of legislation and I want to pass it, I want to know beforehand what I'm going up against.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you think of innovative states in the United States, oftentimes we think of Wyoming, Texas for mining. And it's interesting to see that all these states are actually working together. And maybe you guys are looking at Texas for mining and Wyoming for banking and whatever else they're doing in the crypto industry that they're doing really well. And you're implementing that in your state.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it depends, to the point, it's, mining is big in Texas. We're trying in Pennsylvania, but, we're in the western part of our state. It's all AI and autonomous vehicles. In the eastern part, in the Philadelphia region, it's all eds and meds. So it's like the idea of trying, like Jamie said, moving credentials, like trying to get some of these older institutions to understand that they can keep their credentials on blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, each state has their own value set. They have their own landscape, as we've talked about. We have a 3/4 supermajority Democratic legislature. So, that can present challenges for industry, but you just have to speak in that language. And for them, the values that are important are, equality. How can crypto bring forward, additional opportunities and advancement for, underprivileged communities? You look at issues like privacy, how, we were the first to pass the California Consumer Privacy Protection Act. That was then a boilerplate and spread across the country in protecting privacy. This technology, there's so much that, as we decentralize, that you can take control of your data. And that is something that, our state embraces. So we have our own value set. We need to speak to that value set, but also work together on where there is common ground, and protecting consumers, but allowing innovation is that right balance.
And then also remember, I'm in Washington State, and so often people come to me and they're like, you should just copy what Wyoming did. They're great. Yes, they are great. We love Wyoming, and they're just doing really, really great work. However, every state has a different state constitution. So we can't just copy. We can't just Control-C, Control-V, laws nilly-willy everywhere across the states. And even if, as much as we love Wyoming, we can't copy it because every state has a different constitution.
And to that point, and not only does every state have a different constitution, every state house has a different makeup. Our state house in Pennsylvania is 102, 101 Democratic control. That could change tomorrow. So that's another important part when folks come into our states. They need to understand we get the makeup and how to communicate in our states.
Yeah, Florida's been red for 2 decades on the House, Senate, and governor's side. So what that means is if I have a Democrat sponsor a bill, it is most likely not going to pass. So that obviously means I'm going to cater to Republican talking points, much like you would do the inverse if you were in a blue state. Small stuff like that matters because, say, some outside organization doesn't know that and they have a Democrat sponsor a bill, that actually hurts your political capital down the line here in Florida. So you have to play to that nuance and be careful who you're choosing as your champion and the hyper-local level.
Hyper-local. Talk to your states. Make friends with the states. We have people on the ground across the United States. There you go.
So I want to know, were any of you kind of feeling discouraged, with recent events in the United States and seeing a lot of innovation get pushed offshore and people leave the U.S. to innovate in places like Europe? Has that been discouraging for you guys to, pass legislation in your states? And do you feel a little bit more hopeful now? I guess things seem to be looking up.
For Florida at least, not really. We had FTX and Celsius had huge footprints in Florida. So that hurt us on the legislative side a little bit, but we were able to say, those are scams, and you can't always prevent scams like that. We've had Enron in the past. We have this general infrastructure of laws that don't necessarily account for giant scams. I don't know if FTX and Celsius would have been prevented if we had more strict measures when you lie on the balance sheets, right? And then how do you regulate that? So our legislators understood that. They were more scared of, okay, so we had a lot of Floridians lose money in Celsius. If I'm crypto friendly, are they going to think I'm a Celsius shill? But we were able to clear a lot of that air, and a lot of them understand the hype cycles. So, Miami's still hot. Tampa Bay's still hot. We, of course, would love the federal level to be more exciting, but when you understand that's not necessarily going anywhere, no one wants to leave Florida. People love it here. So when they come, they know the situation that they're getting in. And a lot of our people, they could move to Europe and maybe they domicile over there, but they're going to be in Florida for 6 months still, right? So it definitely has not killed the hype, at least in my state.
I'd also like to say, for states that are a little bit more stringent to work with, like Washington State or New York with the BIT license, the other side of the perspective is, like in Washington State, we blocked Celsius. You could not get Celsius and use Celsius. But on the other side of that, maybe that was a good thing. We minimized the destruction that happened with the Celsius meltdown and other things that happened. So, there's two sides to, really understanding the perspective of what's going on.
Yeah, I think we have always been pro-regulation in a way that, it brings clarity to the state or to, industry, that they know the rules of the road, that they're not going to step in something because it's, they know that's what the entire industry wants federally. But that can happen to an extent on the state level. And that's something we've always been advocating for we had legislation this year that would have put the entire crypto ATM business or out of business, the industry out of business, just because somebody saw it in a local gas station, thought it had a high fee, and said, you know what, I'm going to do a bill that essentially bans these, is a de facto ban. So what we had to do is really build a grassroots community on why should we allow these ATMs to be in your local Circle K? Well, it helps the retailers, the grocers that actually host these. These are mostly small businesses that are minority owned. We got all of the Black Chamber of Commerce, the Latino Chamber of Commerce, the Asian Chamber of Commerce involved. We had to bring this issue to them in a way that they hadn't seen it before, as far as that, economic impact. We were able to improve that bill. We do still think the ATM industry will be able to operate in California. But it was an existential threat to them. And, it was a wake-up call. And a lot of the small actors that aren't willing to be licensed will go away. And maybe at the end of the day, that's good, because those are the bad actors that aren't doing the proper due diligence, that aren't doing KYC, that are allowing money laundering. And, if there is some consolidation and there is some regulatory clarity, and everybody's on the same page there, then maybe that's good for the industry, because it's good for consumers, and it instills that confidence that, they aren't just going to get scammed or lose all their money. So, but it's a balance.
And then if you look at the data, investor-wise, entrepreneurship-wise, innovation-wise, the U.S. still leads. So let's keep on doing that. Let's continue to innovate. And then I also wear a venture capital and entrepreneur hat in my other life. And so as an entrepreneur, go where it's hard. Don't just run to where it's easy to go and build. You could go and build in Gibraltar or, whatever jurisdiction you want to. But building in the United States, this is the largest market in the world. This is where you want to be building. And if it's really hard, go to the states that are actually hard. Go to the Washingtons, the Massachusetts, the New Yorks, the California. Go where it's hard, because if you go with that approach as a fintech business, you'll be able to build your moat much bigger and be able to really win in the end. Play the long game over the short game.
So how do you think it would influence states if a crypto-friendly president was elected, like RFK Jr.?
It would be great. I mean, we could actually, but I think it's it's similar to what Jamie said. We'd have to push up as well. And, you've seen some executive orders come out of this administration that have been a little questionable. So maybe if we have some executive orders that loosen the reins a little bit, it would enable us at the states to pass legislation that would actually promote innovation and stop putting up these roadblocks. Like to Jamie's point, I mean, we have legislators, same thing. Oh, well, we're going to do the bit license in New York. Why? Well, New York did it. That's not the right reason. That's not the answer. Seeing an ATM isn't the right answer. But when you have two major presidential candidates here, it just starts to show that we have the opportunity, and we're getting that movement and the education that we've been, banging our heads against the wall with these legislators. They actually get it. They understand. They understand what actually Bitcoin is, what blockchain is, and what the uses are. But I think on the national stage will only help this entire community move forward.
I think it's our job as states to prepare for 4 to 8 more years of an unfriendly administration toward the industry, and do what you can to, regardless of that unfriendliness, prepare for that. And then you need to be politically smart. If there's a crypto-friendly candidate, that's great, but you also need to look at if they're electable and not put all your money in one basket, and figure out who's the most electable. How can I influence them, as opposed to influencing someone who I know will not land in office?
Yeah, I think, say what you will about Governor Newsom, but he has been a champion for Web3. He did an executive order, outlining exactly what we need in order to keep the industry in California. I think, he's very nervous about the industry leaving the state. So seeing national leadership that, leans in, especially on the left, would be huge. It would give him that confidence he needs that, I'm putting my neck out for this industry. A month later, he got, in his eyes, burned, because you had what happened, with Terra Luna, and then he had all of the entire legislature saying, what are you doing? You're not protecting consumers. But he stood by it, and he's continued to work with us on legislation that really threads the needle to allow the industry to stay in the state. because I think he believes that innovation does need to happen in the country, and in his sake, of course, California.
Great. So I'm not sure if we're out of time or if our panel actually goes another 30. We're out of time? Okay, because I could keep asking questions. I thought it went till 12:45, but I see that there's a lunch break now. So unfortunately, we're out of time, guys. Thanks for attending, and it was wonderful listening to the insights. Thanks, guys. Enjoy lunch.
Hey guys, thanks for coming out to the 2023 North American Blockchain Summit. It was the best summit yet. We look forward to hosting you again next year. If you enjoyed the summit or like what you saw in this video, be sure to subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about membership in the TBC, go to texasblockchaincouncil.org to learn more.